It's been 10 years since marijuana dispensaries first appeared in Las Vegas, and one big sell for that legalization campaign was the promise of enormous taxable revenue to save our schools. But since 2021, Nevada's cannabis revenue has dropped and more or less flatlined. So today on CityCast Las Vegas, we're joined by Rihanna Durrett, director of the UNLV Cannabis Policy Institute. We talk about why those promises haven't materialized and where legal weed is headed. It's Wednesday, January 15th. I'm David Figler, and here's what Las Vegas is talking about. Rihanna, whenever legal cannabis comes up in casual conversation, one thing I consistently hear is, where's all that cannabis money going? Wasn't it supposed to fix our schools? I am pretty positive that you have heard that too. So how do you answer when someone brings that up?
Yeah, it has been very widely misunderstood, and I have kind of given up the PR campaign on explaining where the money went because I've even had people in the industry who should be very familiar with that not know where the money went. Two main reasons it's confusing. One, there was a shift from some of the money going to the rainy day fund for a limited time because of the way the school budgets worked out. Now that is all going to education.
Okay, so how much money does legal cannabis put into Nevada coffers every year so we have kind of a context?
So each year from the time of legalization, I think a good rule of thumb, a good average would be around 100 million.
Hmm.
Last year, the amount of taxes collected on wholesale and retail was approximately 120 million. A small portion of that goes to the cost of running the program. So legalization doesn't cost the state anything. It pays for itself. And $5 million goes towards local governments.
So that's a sizable chunk of money, maybe not as much as some people would hope for. And you said there were a couple of reasons. What's the other reason?
Yeah, so the first reason with this snafu with some of it going into the rainy day fund. The second reason is that nobody, including myself, knew what the actual education budget was at the time there were these promises of how much this would impact education. I was not on the campaign, by the way. I did
Yeah.
not work on the campaign, but at the time when the campaign was being engaged in, I thought, wow, 100 million a year towards education. Turns out that is not going to reform education. We have a multi-billion dollar public education budget. So it is a significant amount of money. 100 million matters to the state of Nevada, but it's not going to overhaul education.
Yeah, and that was a campaign back in 1999 and 2001, and of course, so much has changed since then. Well, let me get right into it. What sort of challenges do you think prevent legal marijuana from reaching its highest revenue potential? I mean, despite all else, it's clearly a popular product. So, what's the disconnect?
Yeah, so I had back when I worked in the industry, there was an owner who would joke that he entered the industry because he thought it was a get rich quick scheme, and it turns out it's not. I had lots of them that would joke that they thought they would be on their private jets, sipping champagne and eating caviar. And this was 5 years into it, they're making this joke. Well, 10 years later, it's still not happening.
Right.
Uh, there are a lot of people looking at this, and I'd say in general, it's because we tax the heck out of it. It's highly taxed, highly regulated, and there's only an intrastate market for each of these. So in another industry where it's highly taxed, highly regulated, in other industries like that, businesses would make money on the margins, right? They would probably have a big corporation. They would distribute throughout the United States, if not the world. They would make a little bit of money on a lot of product. Well, you can't do that here. You can only sell within your own state. So you cannot scale up like those other businesses. On top of that, you have an illegal market to compete with. You don't have, some of them don't have banking, some of them do. Some of them don't have banking, so they have expensive ways to move money and account for money. So there's multiple factors at play that make it so this industry is not making the kind of money that it was expected to make.
Why is the black market still thriving despite the fact that marijuana is legal?
So I did a wonderful policy brief on the legal market that I would encourage people to read at my website. And there are multiple factors, but part of it is every state in the United States underestimated how entrenched the legal market is, and people don't really have as much of a problem buying it illegally as lawmakers and policymakers believed they would. People have a familiarity with the legal market, and so drawing them off of the legal market is harder. And you would think the fact that the products on the legal market are tested and products on the illegal market have pesticides and heavy metals would really attract people, but it hasn't been as attractive as a lot of people estimated. There's also a lack of enforcement against the legal market for various reasons. And there's pockets of consumers that can't even there's not the option to buy legally. For example, tourists in Nevada, if you're staying on the strip corridor, you can only obtain a delivery from an illegal operator, not a legal operator. So there's pockets
Although
that
that seems a little more sketchy. I get your point, though. People make lifelong bonds with their weed guy, right? And oftentimes the weed guys are like magicians when it comes to the botany of it all, and they have a strain that they've figured out or whatever. I get that. I don't know that there's many tourists are just like buying it off of the sidewalk, or if they are, maybe they're going into those fake weed shops or whatever. I think that they would seek out you hop in an Uber, say, where can I go buy legal pot? I think they would get that.
I'm sure plenty of people are hopping in an Uber. Planet 13 estimates they have about 1 million tourists per year go through their
Wow.
store. So it's really fascinating. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it is very unlikely that the average tourist actually knows that whether they're purchasing it legally or illegally. That's
Huh.
something even many Nevada residents wouldn't know. So a tourist is even less likely to know the difference between whether they're buying it legally or illegally. And you'd be surprised if you go online to order, you can easily get an illegal delivery. And
Oh.
it appears sophisticated. The products appear similar to legal products. You may not even know you're ordering it illegally. Some of the times we can step back and say, okay, but people have been doing this forever, for thousands of years. Why do they need to buy the legal product? But law enforcement would tell you there have been quite a few occasions of violence involved in the illegal market just related to cannabis.
Oh, no, all fair points. So why, I guess back to the ultimate question, why do you think that Metro isn't enforcing it to the degree where it's, putting a dent into this black market?
Yeah, I think they prioritize violent crime, and so illegal market cannabis sales are not all. They do sometimes involve violent crime, but they don't always necessarily involve violent crime. There are different illegal markets. There's the delivery illegal market. There is the more like, friends and family illegal market, which is one that I think most people would want to kind of stay away from it because you wouldn't want to re-implement the war on drugs. But there's giant criminal syndicate illegal market where they're growing in large farms in northern Nevada. Those have been busted in the past. So there's different markets, there's different consumers, there's different reasons to deal with each. And I think specifically with Metro, it's an issue of one, they have higher priority crimes, and two, their concern is that it won't be prosecuted since cannabis is legal. Juries are not very eager to prosecute, so
Oh, I
they feel
see.
like, what's the point?
Hey there, it's Sarah Lohman, co-host of CityCast Las Vegas. Did you catch our deep dive into the so-called Tesla tunnels? So last week we published an investigation with ProPublica that took an unflinching look at the system of tunnels Elon Musk's Boring Company is digging under our city. It's a story that's literally playing out under our feet, and we wanted you to know about it. When you become a CityCast Las Vegas member, you support the work that makes stories like this one possible. If you enjoy this podcast and want us to keep asking the hard questions, become a member today. For $8 a month or $80 a year, you'll support journalism that holds the powerful accountable. Visit membership.citycast.fm/Las Vegas to join right now. That's membership.citycast.fm/Las Vegas. And don't forget to read our investigation into the Boring Company on the CityCast Las Vegas website.
You know, we were talking about this report. This is the overview of the 2024 Nevada cannabis economy that came out from your Cannabis Policy Institute. And one thing that I noticed in that report was that it's a lot more expensive to even grow marijuana in Nevada than in other states. It's pretty much double the cost of places like Arizona and California. Why is that?
Yeah, because of our environment, cannabis doesn't grow easily in southern Nevada. So most of the grows are indoor. So they require electricity, a lot more water. So that growing in southern Nevada is a lot more expensive than these other states, which is why Nevada is probably not poised to be an export state if and or when interstate commerce eventually happens.
Okay. You talk about interstate commerce, it would require this legalization on the federal level. Do you think that would make weed cheaper for Nevada retailers and boost their profits?
Probably yes. If there's interstate commerce, I think it would be easy to imagine that cannabis would become more widely available, much more commodified, like um, cigarettes are, maybe. And it would likely become less expensive because there would be the mergers of the companies, there would be scaling up. But I don't know that that is necessarily optimal for Nevada. I think being distributors and retailers in Nevada is a promising future for some of these businesses, but being a cultivator or producer would be really difficult if you have a lot of product coming in from other states.
What other changes do you think could be implemented to boost the profits and thereby boost the amount of money that goes into the tax coffers that you haven't mentioned yet?
Well, I would refer back to my policy report because we do have a lot of discussion of this. Of course, number one is to deal with the illegal market in Nevada. This is something that is not unique to Nevada. This is happening in state after state because state after state followed the same roadmap of high taxes, high regulatory burden. Of course, they're all bound by this lack of interstate commerce. So the legal market is nothing new, or it's not unique to Nevada, but it is something that is impacting us greatly, and we do have the ability to do something about it. Another way to help improve the healthiness of the industry would be to take a step back on some regulations that we now, after 10 years, can look at and say, okay, we have enough data now to say there weren't really the risks we thought there were at the beginning.
Yeah, and maybe you could speak to that really clearly. I know a lot of operators have complained that it's overly regulated, and especially in today's environment. I mean, you're sounding outright Muskian in saying we need to get rid of some of these regulations. What have been the burdensome regulations that you think might be on the chopping block to increase sales and revenue?
Just a couple of examples would be expanding delivery. So, one kind of old rule that we don't really need, a legacy rule, does not allow for delivery to like manufactured home establishments, or I don't know. There's probably a legal definition, but manufactured home park, basically.
Hmm.
You can't deliver there. There's really no reason you wouldn't be able to deliver there when you could deliver to somebody's house. So expanding delivery, not having as many limitations as we have on delivery is one. We have packaging and labeling rules that could be streamlined. We have agent card rules that could be streamlined. So there are various areas where we found out that, okay, we were careful because we were being very reasonable about legalizing this drug. But it turns out there is not the risk of robberies that we thought there were. There's not the risk of robbing the delivery vehicles that we thought there was. So I'd certainly not promote doing anything that harms public safety or public health, but there are some that we can show after 10 years are not as risky as we thought they were at the beginning.
One takeaway from the report that just came out is that there is a need for uniform best practices. And to me, that was very interesting. So, what best practices would make cannabis in our community a better thing?
One thing that's widely discussed is kind of a lack of uniformity for understanding labeling. Across the country, there are different advocates for uniform packaging and labeling requirements. Now, there is no federal standard, right? Because it's only legal at the state level. The federal government doesn't come in and say, this is what you have to put on every package or label. So
Hmm.
states possibly could work together voluntarily and start to come up with these standards. And that would be a best practice that could be shared across the United States.
So give me some examples of what that might be.
So, one easy example is a universal label just indicating that this has THC. We don't even have that across the country. So, if a visitor comes here from another state, there's nothing on the package that they would recognize from their own state saying that this has THC. So, that is kind of the easiest, lowest hanging fruit of, hey, let's all agree to have one symbol that lets you know that this is a cannabis product.
Oh,
And
I see.
again, that would just be the place to start. We also have looked at responsible marketing as a national conversation, and every state has its own rules, right? So we need to look at, well, what is actually, for example, attractive to children? We all
Mm.
just made up what we thought was attractive to children: balloons, cartoons, shiny packaging, but it wasn't based on data or research. Now that data and research is actually being developed. So let's go back and say, okay, this is what's attractive to children. Let's avoid this.
So what is attractive to children?
So there is a researcher named Elisa Padone who has researched this, and some of her findings are very specific. Things like multiple colors, positive sensations, actions being taken, and illustrations.
Mm.
So now we have state by state prohibitions on advertising that aren't really connected to this research. So that's why we started with, well, hey, let's start having our prohibitions on advertising mirror the actual research, along with many other areas where we do have data and we can start having our policies and our laws match research that's been conducted.
Yeah. I know that there's been a lot of kind of like hesitancy to, even in a place like Las Vegas, to just, outright go, this weed will get you effed up. Do you think that Las Vegas will ever be ready for a little bit maybe more audacious advertising when it comes to weed versus other places that might be a little more conservative?
Gosh, I think I'm glad that Southern Nevada has kept this decorum. I think it's more fitting with our, our atmosphere of the nice resort corridor. But I personally am glad that we've kept somewhat of a level of decorum in these advertisements, and we don't have a race to the bottom, and we don't have I remember as a kid, the billboard with the women's rear ends hanging out, right? We don't have
Hmm.
that for the most part in cannabis, and
The
I
no
like
ifs,
that in
ands,
Nevada.
or buts
Right,
campaign, I
exactly,
think, for
exactly. That's like
crazy
the
girls.
classic one. Yeah,
Right.
yeah, exactly. So I think it's great. I don't think there's a push to make cannabis advertisements sleazy again. But one thing that I think is very important to this topic is that various states, their surveillance of youth use have shown that youth use has gone down in states with legalization.
You mentioned the resort corridor and how kind of there's a decorum. I can't help but wonder why you think that the casinos have been so hesitant to have anything to do with the cannabis industry, i.e., you can't possess or use in a casino, or new dispensaries aren't allowed to be too close to the resort corridor. So what gives?
Yeah, it makes sense on their end. Since there's the federal prohibition on cannabis, gaming does not want to be connected to this federally illegal substance, federally illegal businesses. They could be put at risk if there was any non-compliance with federal money standards under the Bank Secrecy Act, for example. So there is this reservation to get involved. I do think we've gone sort of beyond those reasons and made even a wider net of separation, or cast a wider separation. But the reason to stay far apart is based on federal law, and it has been imposed by the Gaming Control Board.
Do you think there's going to be any give, especially if it either gets declassified or legalized on a federal level? You think the casinos are going to jump in?
Yeah, if it's completely legal, I think that casinos would not have a reason to stay away. I don't think they are enamored with the idea of having combustibles or smoke in their casinos, because it does have a strong smell that would probably be hard for them to control. And I don't
Although, I
think
mean, come
they're
on, let's be real. Since legalization, the whole town at different times smells a little weedy and not always like the good stuff.
Yes, true. And this is already, yes, this is happening everywhere. I don't think it's going to be nearly as much revenue as some of their other revenue streams. So I don't think it's at the top of the list, but I think they'll make it part of the tourist experience eventually.
Interesting. I mean, you get free drinks when you play enough at the video poker machines. I wonder if you'll get a free edible or something too, huh?
I guess our Chair Steger Bloom at the county commission can only wish. This has been
Yeah,
his vision for since the beginning. So,
Tick Bloom, the godfather of weed, our county commissioner chair. Well, let me ask you this. Is 2025 the year where legal pot can turn it around and finally make that big, big sweet money?
I don't think you're going to see drastic changes in 2025. Cannabis is ever evolving. The policies are ever evolving, and there have been so many things that nobody predicted from the beginning. So it's very hard to make predictions, but there could be future twists and turns, and who knows, maybe Kennedy will get confirmed and do something drastic. But as far as it becoming a big overnight monetary success, I think it's going to take a few more years.
Rhianna Durrett from the UNLV Cannabis Policy Institute. I really appreciate your insights here, and here's to high times for the cannabis industry.
Thank you so much for having me on.
And that's all for today here on CityCast Las Vegas. If you enjoyed the show, why not tell a friend? You can rate our show, leave us a review, and subscribe to our morning newsletter. We'll be back tomorrow morning with more news from around the city. Till then, stay lucky. Well, that makes sense. And I guess no time soon will we be seeing Cannabear, the cute little purple bear cub, selling marijuana, right?
I think
you can laugh
session...
at my jokes. Rhianna, you can laugh at my jokes.
I do. I'm picturing
You're a smile
I'm picturing
laugher.
a Cannabear.